Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your board game doctor today. I'm excited to share in this video my first impressions that are non sponsored, of course, for Movers and Shakers. This is a game by Solidage and Sentiero, which are designers of games such as Madeira and Nippon, which are excellent games that I've played on Board Game Arena and am excited to share this new game of theirs that is currently at the time of this recording on GameFound. So, if I can get through this work in progress rulebook, I want to show you what the setting is. So, essentially, in the 1800s, we are economic forces in the East Indian Railway Company, basically helping transport goods between two cities in the area, Benares and Calcutta, and profiting from the shipment of these goods. So it may sound a little dry, but as soon as you see how the game works, I think you'll start to see this game as, or seem a little bit more rich than perhaps what it sounds like. And so, fortunately, this is on Board Game Arena for Alpha, for anyone to try who has access to Alpha or knows someone who has access to it. But to give you an example of what this game kind of is about, I will show you. I think this is my favorite part of the game is how you take a turn. So in this game that I'm playing against myself, I choose one of these cards that are in my hand. They do come from decks that are, you do have like 6 to 8 of these cards in a total of like 30 or so cards to choose from. And they give you basic actions such as loading your trains and moving them. And if you meet certain conditions, you can load more or move more as you go along. What you do is you match one of these cards onto your own tableau and offer you a different choice as well, whether to activate the top portion of the location or the bottom, which allows you to move up tracks, move your trains further, or and it's etc. So for this next move, as the red player, what I'm thinking of doing is perhaps I should try to move my train here to Calcutta and try to start unloading some of my goods that I have dropped off here onto these ships for some bonuses. And I do get some victory points in the form of money, essentially, to convert into victory points later by participating in the, loading these ships. So to do so, for example, I think I want to move. Let's go ahead and move my train this way. And I want to take advantage of this top portion of my tableau, which is the development action. And let's go ahead and perform the main action and move my train 3 times. And the interesting thing about this train movement is that you can move any train, whether it's yours or someone else's. And you notice that I do have cubes of my own color as well as my opponent. When you do move trains, you have trains that are small, medium, and large in size. And if they come across a train along this track that makes a long train, that can form a long train, for example, such as these two trains here, you can combine them in these junction sites essentially and move them along. Uh, if you bump into a train that is ahead of you, you move that train ahead 1 space for free. And so there's an element of strategery in how and when you load your trains and move them, and hoping to most efficiently move your trains, whether it's pushing them along with your own movement, or if you have a lot of cubes on another train of a different color, hoping that your opponent would move their train along to benefit from that as you deliver your goods. So let's go ahead and load a ship. So I've already, delivered some of these. I'm actually loading these goods that I have here onto the ship, and so let's just go ahead and Choose, am I doing okay with money? Let's get some more money. So let's load a ship here to gain some money. I get to move another train, and that's my turn. So you are doing this, and I'm not going to go into all of the rules, but you are in the basic scheme of things, moving these trains and goods along. When you deliver these trains, you get to progress up this track and gain money and different resources of different types. You will have opportunities to advance up these tracks, which will give you money as well at the end of the round. And you convert all of these coins, this money that you gain, into victory points here and elsewhere as well. So that is essentially the game in a nutshell. Once again, combining these cards that are randomly drawn to your hand and playing them in an order that makes sense, combining them with the optional actions that you have here, both at the top and the bottom of your player board, and hopefully, as efficiently as possible, moving your goods as far as you can and being able to get as much money as you can to convert into points by the end of the game. So that's essentially how the game works. So normally I would go into game comparisons at this moment to talk about some of the mechanisms or theme or feelings that I get when playing this game. And I think the closest game that I was able to determine based off of what I've heard from other people and not from my own experience, because I haven't played Panamax. I believe Panamax is a game by these same designers that kind of utilizes the same action selection mechanism where you have different cards that you're trying to configure onto your tableau to take your actions with. So, other than that, I mean, there are a lot of elements that I do remember from games such as Madeira, such as Nippon, which include a little bit of area majority with the ships, as well as track advancement, both literally and figuratively. And so, nothing terribly new, I feel like, with this game, but it still feels unique because of the theme and the abstraction that is presented in a quote unquote train game of this type, where we are only going in between two different cities instead of connecting multiple different routes. Sure, there's a kind of an element of pick up and deliver, but we're not really fulfilling contracts per se. We are moving trains back and forth, and instead of the puzzle of building a route and maybe using someone else's route to achieve your contracts and move your trains, you're hoping to efficiently push your own trains, your own cubes, while having others help you out by doing the work for you, essentially. So that feels pretty unique mechanically to me. And throughout the other games and other experiences that I have heard of, aside from Panamax, when it comes to taking your turns and actions, I think this game feels pretty unique. So, when looking at comments on Board Game Geek, I think it's still a little too early to really get a feeling for how the general public feel about this game. One, because it's such a new game and it's on GameFound, and so a lot of the comments are very positive, of course. And to because of it being on crowdfunding. So bypassing what other people have said, going straight into my first impressions, I give it a pretty solid score, an 8.4 out of 10. So I think this game, despite its weight, is relatively easy to learn. Un- Unlike games like Madeira, I felt like I really had a harder time learning, and that game, I could not teach you that game now. Even though I've played it before, it would. This game felt more akin to Nippon, which I think it looks a lot more complicated than it actually feels like to learn and play. And I think Movers and Shakers is more understandable from the get go than that game is than Nippon. So I think it's pretty good. It's still a complex Euro game, but it's pretty digestible upon first glance. So this game's length is really good for a Euro game. I think, sure, it could probably last about 2 to 3 hours if you're playing for, with a higher player count. But even just two players, the concept of this game is that you are essentially taking 12 actions a game. You fill out your tableau over 6 cards. You choose 6 cards from your hand. You do some upkeep, you do some investing, and then you do it all over again, and that's the game. So as it is now, it's a pretty quick game, and so I I do quite enjoy how, once again, digestible this game is, not only to learn but also to play in a relatively short amount of time. You could play this, relatively well on a weeknight, for example. The macro and micro strategy, so like the big strategic overview of this game, I feel like there are a few opportunities for avenues to go down, but you kind of essentially are trying to accomplish the same things, right? I think this game really shines with the micro strategy, or the turn by turn or tactical nature of this game, utilizing the combinations of cards on your tableau and evaluating the game state based off of what other people have done and what cards are randomly dealt to you as well, to decide to move certain trains or wait and load trains or do something, right? So a lot of variability there, trying to accomplish the main thing, but you could potentially focus in on certain things if you have the right combinations of, say, icons to progress up this track, or to deliver as many cubes as possible to go up this track, and so, or to unload a lot of those. If you have a lot of cards to unload on the ships, you can focus your energies here. You could probably do a little bit of everything and still get a pretty good score, but I think there is some wiggle room. So I give it a middling grade for macro strategy or big picture strategic avenues. I think the thematic integration is pretty good. It's it's pretty well abstracted, I think, and so there are other more complex euros that may be even more thematic in how they present this era of time in this particular area of the world. But I think it's fairly good, and I think the theme does kind of come through in an interesting way with the mechanisms. So once again, the mechanisms are super strong with this game. I feel like that is why you would play this game, is to live the unique mechanisms that are an abstraction, but they still tell the story in a unique way. The variability is really good. I like the different combinations of some of these cards that you get from the deck to decide not only when to load and when to move, but also little micro goals to achieve, such as getting being the highest in, this track, in a certain, part of this track, whether it's the Bengal or Benares or Calcutta or Benares city track, right? To allow for some extra movement or extra loading, etc. So I really do like the variability that is presented there. And all that to say is, I think this game is really fun and replayable. The player interaction is a 5 out of 5 for me because of the race to get certain tiles as you progress up these tracks, and to make investments as well. But also, of course, the pushing of carts and loading of each other's cubes onto these carts as well, and the area majority aspect of the ships is all very interactive. And so that's something that I feel like contributes to this skill mastery of this game. I think this one does have a relatively high skill ceiling to learn how to play well. And as you play this game with, I think, as you play this game with higher skill leveled players, it would become a very interesting game to watch and to play. It may not be as strategic as a game like Terra Mystica, but I think it becomes pretty close. And so that's something that I really do appreciate about this game. So once again, 8.4 out of 10, not too bad. It's very tempting for me to back this game myself on GameFound, and I, of course, say this without any sponsorship from them, but at the very least, this game will be on Board Game Arena. The solo mode, I heard, should be implemented soon. I don't know how soon is, but it should be on as well. And the one thing that I do appreciate from the publisher, I apologize, I don't remember the publisher of this game at the top of my head, but I can find out very quickly. Yes, Quinid Games, Quinid Games. They, if I am not mistaken, they did Carnegie and um, Stupor Mundi from last year. Those were also implemented on Board Game Arena to get playtesting done and to tweak those games to make the experience as good as possible, which I think was really well received with Carnegie, for example, and Stupor Mundi was a pretty good game too. So I really like the fact that they took the time to do this and to have this game available for not only me, to review and try out, but also to configure this game and fine tune it to its best, most balanced, but also most fun possibility in that it could be. So really appreciate that. And so yeah, those are my first impressions of Movers and Shakers. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And as always, thank you for scheduling an appointment with me, and hope that you schedule one real soon. Take care.